In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Today, we hear the Gospel telling us to love our enemies and to do good to those who hate you. No other religion or cult teaches that. No one. Only Christianity. That's why this commandment is above human understanding. It's not just that. We hear more in the Bible, when the Gospel, when the deacon just read it for us. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, and bless those who curse you, and pray for those who spitefully uses you. When we read this, sometimes we think this commandment is for some people, for some selected people, not for everyone to follow. Some might think like that. Some of us might think like that. Say, no, this is not for everyone. It's just for those who are able to follow these commandments. But the fact is, Christ said this to everyone. It's not just for a specific or selected group of people. He said it to all his followers, to all the Christians. But how can we love our enemies? We love our enemies. We need to ask ourselves, who is my enemy? Who is he? I need to identify my enemy first to be able to love him. Sometimes we fight with a lot of people around us. Is my enemy my younger brother? Is my enemy my father or my daughter or my son? Who is my enemy? Is it my co-workers at work? Is it my neighbor that I keep fighting with? Who is my enemy? We need to ask ourselves this question. Once we identify the one that we think is the enemy, then we can work on how to love them. When you think of it that way, you will find out that we don't really, those who we call enemies, those are God's image. Those are people. God created them on His image. He planted His Spirit in them. He created them on His image. And as we agreed before, I serve people. I serve God in the people around me. So if those people are difficult, they're causing us troubles, we don't call them enemies. But if they persecute us, then we start to think, okay, well, they're not really helping us to serve them. We can ask ourselves another question. First, we identify the one we think our enemy, and then we ask ourselves always, why do they hate us? I'm sure when we say the word enemy, a few faces might come to the mind. Oh, this person or that person, they're very difficult with us and they cause us a lot of problems. But we always ask ourselves, why do they hate us? So first we ask, who are they? Identify them, and then we ask, why do they hate us? Is it because of something wrong that they do to us? Or is it because of something wrong that we do and they're just protecting themselves? So we are re-evaluating the situation again. Re-evaluate the situation. Sometimes we see problems between a husband and a wife, and it gets to the point of enmity. They can't stand one another. If everyone think about why the problem happened, why there is a disconnection between both of them, if everyone judge himself first, most likely this enmity will go away. Because the devil does not want us to be united. He wants division. That's how he wins. Ask yourself another question. Do I see the good? Do I see the good on those people who I call enemy? Do I see the good in them? Are they pure evil, as we call them? Or do they actually do good things? If I'm able to see the good they do, then I'll be able at least to find some goodness here and there, and I can commend it and I can pray for them. There is no one such a pure evil. Imagine St. Paul or Saul when he first persecuted the church. All the Christians were afraid of him, right? But then he attended one situation where St. Stephen applied this command when he was stoned to death. St. Stephen, the archdeacon, the first deacon, the first martyr of the church, he was stoned to death, and while he was being stoned, he is dying and he is praying for those who are killing him. This situation touched him, touched St. Paul. He didn't understand, but he remembers it very well. St. Stephen said, God, please do not charge them with this sin. Ya Rabbi, la taqum lahum hazihi al-khatiyya. Do not charge them with this sin. Saul then became St. Paul. If we as Christians do not show love to those who hate us and persecute us, how are we going to deliver the message of the gospel, the good news, the message of love? It's difficult because we need to live what we say or what we preach. Ask yourself another question. Always ask yourself this. Do you understand, or do we understand, that those people are normal people too? Do we understand that? That they are a normal people? That they are under weakness of humanity, that they can sin? Do we understand that? Or we expect them to be 100% perfect, no mistakes? There's no one that's 100%. There's no one that's perfect. It's a command for us to be perfect, but there is no actually one who is completely perfect. So if we are waiting for them to make a mistake or just live in kind of temporary peace with them because they're okay with us, but once one mistake happens, then start the enmity between both of us, then we need to reconsider why I do this. Accept people as they are and always give room to the human fault. Ask yourself another question. Do I look at the problems that they cause us as a wake-up call? There was this situation in the Old Testament where David the prophet was fleeing away from Saul the king. And David, when he was not yet enthroned or set on the throne, he used to travel with a group of warriors. Each one of them is so capable to fight 20 people by himself. That's how strong they were. And David himself, he was a war man. He was really strong. And while he was traveling with his group of people, these warriors with him, one of the Israelites, just one person, on the other side of the river, stood and started to insult David the prophet. He started to insult David, his king, and he knows he is the king. And then one of the people around David asked David, just let me pass across and just cut his head off. Let me do that. And David said, no, do not go to the other side. Do not do anything. Because David said to them, because God told him to curse me. David thought about his own sins at this moment that he was cursed and didn't look at this man as his enemy. He thought inside. He said, God, wanted this guy to say these words for me as a message for me, because they're probably a sin I did, something that I need to meditate on. Do we think like that? Or are we always defensive when it comes to our honor and dignity? We can't stand any word, we can't stand someone that say any bad word to us or insult us in any way. We need to be aware, we need to be careful how we respond. Because sometimes it might be a wake-up call for us to move toward the righteous. So if I know who my enemy is, and I ask myself, why do I hate them? And I ask myself, do I see the good on those that I call enemies? We'll find out that we don't really have enemies among human beings. We don't have enemies. If the early church looked at Saul, which is Saint Paul, as an enemy, they would have never prayed for him. They would have never accepted him to convert to be Christian. They didn't look at him as enemy, because God already answered that question for us. Your enemy is the devil. So always remember this: when someone bothers you in any way or persecute you because you're Christian or you're smart or you're successful, have in your heart this answer for yourself. It's not because that they're jealous, it's because that the devil is controlling them sometimes. They're giving the devil the chance to move them and to make them attack us. So we don't really have enemies among humans. We only have one enemy, that's the devil. That's want us divided. He wants to spread the hatred between people so they cannot be united. Without God's grace, we cannot think like that. It's easy to be sitting in a church on a Sunday afternoon and listen to Abuna's sermon, and oh yeah, Abuna got a point. He has a point when we need to think like that, and we need to understand what the situation, reevaluate the situation. We cannot do this on our own, because at the moment of heat, we don't usually think. We let our reflexes take over. Problem happens. Without His grace, without God's grace, we are not able to accept situations like this. So, yes, it's above human measures to love our enemies, but remember also that we are human with His Spirit in us, with the Holy Spirit directing us. So, let us give a chance to the Holy Spirit to work inside us. When we are in one of those situations where we're ready to fight, just pray first. Ask for His grace. There is this prayer that I always quote from. It's for a bishop from, I think, Poland during the concentration camps in the Second World War. He was praying for his enemies. And the prayer is very, very deep that I'd like to share it with you. Can we connect the prayer, please, guys? Nova, can you connect the prayer? We will just read it together. And we can share it, or we can share the link after that if you guys want to read it at home. So the prayer goes like this. Bless my enemies, O Lord. Bless my enemies, O Lord, even I bless them, and do not curse them. Enemies have driven me into your embrace more than friends have. Friends bound me to earth. Enemies have loosed me from earth and have demolished all my aspirations in this world. Bless my enemies, O Lord, even I bless them, and do not curse them. They, rather than I, have confessed my sins before the world. They have scolded me whenever I have flattered myself. Bless my enemies, O Lord, even I bless them, and do not curse them. Whenever I have wanted to lead people, they have shoved me into the background. Whenever I have rushed to enrich myself, they have prevented me with an iron hand. Whenever I tried to build a home for a long and tranquil life, they have demolished it and driven me out, and have stretched out my hands to the hem of your garment. Bless my enemies, O Lord, even I bless them, and do not curse them, so that my fleeing to you may have no return, so that all my hope in people may be scattered like cobwebs, so that my heart may become the grave of my two evil twins, arrogance and anger, so that I might amass all my treasure in heaven, so that I may for once be freed from self-deception, which has entangled me in the dreadful web of illusory life. Enemies have taught me to know what hardly anyone knows, that we have no enemies in this world except ourselves. It is truly difficult for me to say who had done me more good and who has done me more evil in this world, friends or enemies. Therefore, bless, O Lord, both my friends and my enemies. Slaves curse their enemies, for they do not understand, but children bless them, for they understand. For they know that their enemies cannot touch their lives. Therefore, they freely step among their enemies and pray to God for them. This is someone who was being tortured, Bishop Nikolai Flamirovich. He was being tortured in a concentration camp, and he was praying for those who are torturing him. He saw his enemy as a way, as a mean to get him to heaven. He saw them as blessings in his life. He was able to pray for them. We don't have anyone that's torturing us. We didn't reach that level yet. We just have disagreement sometimes. We don't have a general accord at other times. But that doesn't mean that we create enemies. If you cannot be friends with someone, at least do not make him an enemy. Pray for them. And when God hears your prayer for those who are prosecuting you or giving you a hard time, He will give you the strength to withstand all the tribulation. To Him is glory forever and ever. Amen.